Man, this is like my brain's going on overload right now.
Can I tee us up on some of the greats and some of the legends?
Yeah, that's where I was going.
You've had a chance to play with. Can I just say he's mentioned Shingo a few times. He has 50 Grand Slam titles. He has a 106 match win streak that spanned 3 years.
Which sounds great as long as you don't get to Esther next.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. 4 Olympic gold. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy's so good. Yeah, and then you get to Esther and she's like, she didn't lose for a decade. And you're like, oh my God. Like just some of the greats. It's been really fun reading about these people.
Let's run through, and obviously we're all kind of victims of the moment, and we have a phenom in Tokito Oda. So we want to get your thoughts on him. You mentioned Randy Snow, you mentioned David Hall, you mentioned Esther Vergeer. I mentioned Monique Kalkman, who I got to know during our induction ceremony. Just run through the superheroes of your sport and give us a little bit on not just how great they are, but like why. Like, look at Randy Snow. How is his game different than a David Hall, than a Shingo, than a Tokito? Let's get super nerdy about this.
Okay, and I'll give you my best of all of them. You mentioned Monique. Obviously, we talked about Brad. The one that we haven't mentioned yet is Chantal Vandierendonck, who was the first really, truly elite level player in the women's division. And interestingly, Chantal, Monique, and Esther are all from the Netherlands. So all 3 of the female players, I don't know what they're doing in that country, but they seem to have a corner on the market in the women's division.
Is there a reason, like you mentioned that, but is there like a general, like when you guys and gals are in the locker room, are you going, oh yeah, the Netherlands, they're great because of this thing, right? It's like Spaniards, right? It's like Nadal finishes and then they have this other guy coming in. Like, it's nuts. It's not fair.
Where do they find them? How do they develop them kind of situation? Because now you've got Dita in the women's division. She's from the Netherlands as well. So four elite level impressive.
They got something going on with. They got something going on with their tires. They got some tires.
The rest.
There's a tire conspiracy out of the Netherlands. I'm starting that rumor right now.
The rest of us are trying to figure out what it is and how they do it. They do have some good coaching. They do have some good programming, and obviously that helps. They are a smaller country geographically, and so these players can get together more often and train with the same coaches and work together, those types of things. I think that helps and is an advantage, but it is an interesting phenomenon. Like you say, when you get a string of players from a particular country that become dominant, it's like, all right, what are they doing? We got plenty of people in our court or in our country that are elite level athletes. What are we not missing here? Or what are we missing here that we got to figure out? So I don't have the answer to that, but Chantal, she was a player before she was injured, very fluid, very just clean what she did. She wasn't the fastest player, but she was solidly consistent. She didn't make many mistakes. She had a long reach. She had long arms, and she could reach out and extend, and so she could get to more balls. But just a really beautiful player to watch is kind of the way that I would put it. She was enjoyable to watch. Her fluidity and her consistency and the skill set that she had. Monique, not that she was on the other spectrum, but she to me was kind of one of those grinders. You could tell that she was determined and she worked hard and she pushed hard and she did everything that she could to maximize what she had on the court kind of thing. And again, she had the resume to be worthy of the Hall of Fame, but just somebody that you could tell, all right, work ethic, effort, training, repetition is something that's important. That was something that I picked up from Monique, is that I got to work harder if I want to be better. And I'm not going in any particular order. Brad and Randy. Randy was a junior player before his injury, so he had a little bit of a tennis background. So I think that helped him. But I think he's the one that kind of raised the level of the concept of going from maybe a recreational type wheelchair tennis player who might be a good athlete and had some success to what does it take on the court and off the court to maximize everything that I possibly had from a training standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. He and Val Moore did a lot with coaching and coaching curriculum back in the day and helped a lot of other players learn some of those things, and some of his concepts on mobility and strategy and those types of things. It just seemed like his mind was always working about what can I do next? What can I do better? How can I be even better on the court. Great personality as well, just very engaging. We lost him too.
Sorry to interrupt.
Soon.
To draw parallels, I'm sorry to interrupt when you were talking about his unfortunate passing, but was he kind of, would his comp in able-bodied tennis be like, I remember Jimmy Connors coached me. He's like, you guys do all these weights and stuff. I just played more tennis. Like that's what I did. Right. And it was very different than a Lendl who started doing track work, a Jim Courier who was an animal and attacked the sport equally away from the court as it did on the court. Is that similar to what you're talking about with Randy?
I would say that would be a Courier-like approach to, if I work harder off the court at whatever I need to work on off the court, it will translate into performance. Doesn't mean that he hit fewer balls per se, but he recognized that it wasn't just about, I need to get on the tennis court and hit more balls. There's more to it. So I think that's a good analogy with those players. Brad probably was an even greater athlete than any of us realize or recognize. We got to remember that he also founded the National Foundation of Wheelchair Tennis and was trying to run that and organize the tournament schedule and organize the wheelchair sports camps for the kids and dealing with fundraising and dealing with board members and all of the administrative and managerial things that had to happen so the rest of us could go out and have a good time playing tournaments. Is
it similar to like a Billie Jean King type figure where all of a sudden she's dealing with all of these other things away from the court as well as being one of the best players of all time?
Yeah. Brad, and again, not to take anything from Randy, they had a good rivalry and others back in the day, but I think Brad would have had more titles if he would have been able to just be a tennis player and not have to be the CEO of wheelchair tennis at the same time. So great analogy from that. But talented athlete, very dedicated. Again, none of us can really fully appreciate how much thanks and gratitude we owe to Brad and to his wife, Wendy, for everything they did to get this sport started and to see that it had a legacy going forward to see where we are today. David Hall was maybe a combination of everything. He was kind of quiet, not outspoken, not high profile, but you could just tell that there was a quiet, determined, reserved focus about him. And he did what he did in his way all the time. And it translated into an incredible career. He was a great mover without you realizing that he was a great mover. A little bit maybe like Federer kind of thing. He just got to balls. And he was quite consistent, quite steady. He didn't really have anything overpowering about his serve or his game. He had a wicked slice backhand, but he just was a complete player. He could do it all. Back in his day, it was still mostly a baseline game, so he wasn't coming to the net. Just like all of us back in the day weren't doing that. We see that more today. But as a baseline player, he had about as complete a game, I think, as anybody did. He could just kind of do everything, and he moved really well.
It's interesting because if you just saying that and me not knowing how the game has changed stylistically, it feels like it's almost like Benjamin Button to where like able-bodied tennis is now moving towards the baseline and wheelchair tennis, from what you're just saying, is moving the opposite way.
Yeah.
It's like ships passing in the night.
Kind of feels like that a little bit. Again, as players recognize that if I can get to a ball that much quicker, I take that much more time away from my opponent. Realistically, it's still harder to get from point A to point B in a wheelchair than it is on your feet kind of situation. So even if it's fractions of a second or a second, that's a huge deficit. And over a 2, 3, 4, 5 ball rally, that adds up. You get that player so far out of position, you've got such an easy put away shot at some point in time. And so now we transition maybe to the Shingo, who really will be our next player in the Hall of Fame, I think. His retirement time frame, obviously, his career statistics are worthy of induction. He elevated everything that the rest of us have done just to a different level, on the court and off the court. A little bit better in mobility, a little bit better in consistency, a little bit better in strength, a little bit better in power, a little bit better in mindset, a little bit better in training and conditioning and that approach, those types of things. And so he and Esther, to me, are two of my heroes. and two people, Randy as well. I watched Randy a lot, kind of thing, to see what he did. I watched David Hall a lot to see what he did. All of them I watched and tried to study and tried to emulate, and thought, all right, they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, maybe they've got a little bit more physical function than I do, but there's nothing that says I can't train harder. There's nothing that says I can't work on consistency. There's nothing that says I can't work on a part of my game that's a weakness, and trying maybe not necessarily to always turn it into a strength, but limit the exposure that I have to that weakness, kind of thing. And so they're all my heroes in my opinion, and watching them, seeing what they did, what they accomplished. But yeah, when you talk about Shingo and Esther and their records, again, not to take anything away from what they've done, wheelchair tennis, we've got a few hundred on the men's ranking, couple hundred on the women's ranking, less than 100 on the quad ranking internationally. So we don't have the mass number of players. And so when somebody gets really good, they have a tendency, I mean, you look at some of these careers, they're able to stay at the top for a little bit longer than maybe some of the changeovers and some of the parity and some of the, outcomes in the ATP and WTA events. Again, not to take anything away. When you're really good and you're consistently good, it means that you've worked your tail off to get that good.
I just
and
need
you deserve it.
We just need to level set for a second, because we live in a country where we celebrate like SEC titles where there are 8 teams. Right. And we celebrate, like we say we're national champions when it's national champions under a certain age, not playing against the best in the world. And we celebrate that as if we've just solved a crime or something. Right. Like so like, again, don't undersell. We literally live in the country that likes to celebrate silos of accomplishment, and we'll break them off until we can celebrate it. So listen, best on earth is best on earth is best on earth is best on earth. And that's more that we can say about most sports that exist inside of their own little leagues that they've created for their celebrations.
Yeah. And that's well put, and kind of where I was going with it. It doesn't matter if there's 100 or 100,000. If you're the best consistently over time, bring on the other 1,000, 100,000 any day, and they'll still beat them, kind of thing. They're just that good. They're that unique and special as athletes, standing up or sitting down, kind of thing.
Tell me, so you mentioned the 100 and I think you said 6 straight matches with Shingo. Talk about, like, let's make it real. Some of Esther's stats where it's 400 plus match wins, and like, we're talking, this is Looney Tunes. Kind of the statistics that we're like, she's the equivalent of, and maybe even more so than the 3 guys that I had to deal with. And all of a sudden people going, is so-and-so going to get to 24 slams? I'm like, that is a bananas conversation to have. It doesn't even make sense. They ruined it for the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, you just have to sit back for a minute and reflect upon anybody at any level of competition in any sport. But since we're talking tennis, anybody go out and try to win 400 plus matches in a row.
470.
I lost 4 Dingles games this morning.
Try to do that. And yeah, it was 600 and something. She lost out in Australia to Danny DeToro, was the one match that she lost. She already had a streak of like 200 or close to 200. I didn't know that. And she lost a match down there. I actually talked about it. She said, yeah, I just didn't prepare. I wasn't prepared for the wind that I had to deal with. Danny played well that day, but she says it was on me. I was not as prepared as maybe I could have been or should have been that day. There have been other really, really good players, and this maybe transitions a little bit into the newer era. Tokito doing what he did. Gustavo had 4 match points at the U.S. Open. He was that close to taking all of that golden slam away from Tokito. And Gustavo has been a really good player for a number of years. In the last year or so, he's elevated the level of his game and has been pressing these top players even more than maybe he had been in years past, kind of thing. So it was a huge moment for him. But again, it speaks to the quality and the level of play that we have, that Tokito or even Esther, it wasn't a given. They still had to play and prepare. It's not like they just showed up and said, oh, yeah, I can do this. They were tested. They were challenged. Esther was down in a Paralympics match against a fellow countrywoman. one year and came back and won that match. They both had their records on the line. Shingo more than one time had his records on the line, but just like greatness at any level, the ones that are up against it find a way in some of those matches that really could go either way to pull that match out kind of situation. And that's what we're seeing nowadays with Tokito and Shingo before him kind of thing. Gordy and Alfie from Great Britain, two elite level players. I mean, we could go on and talk about everybody, but like you said, greatness is greatness. And when you do it consistently over time, again, it doesn't matter if there's 100, 1,000, 100,000, or 1 million people, they're going to beat them all.